As always, with every new season or episode that comes out in Destiny 2, on my channel, I continually do the top 10 most popular weapons being used for that current season, and also cover the top 10 most popular exotics being used for that season. Now, if you haven't already seen the top 10 most popular weapons being used, go ahead and click on this video on my channel. I've already uploaded that one. But in today's video, I'm going to be covering the top 10 most popular exotics being used this season right now in the Edge of Fate DLC. And like I say with every one of these videos, these top 10 weapons are being used for a particular reason, and that reason is always because these are the best 10 weapons to be using in the current meta. So for some reason, if you aren't using these weapons and you're looking to improve your Destiny 2 gameplay, definitely take a look at these top 10 lists and maybe try and incorporate these exotics into your loadouts. But anyway, without further ado, let's get straight into this list. And starting off in at number 10, we have the Galah Horn. Now the Galah Horn is just the go-to rocket launcher for any sort of fire team or raid based activity where you are using rocket launchers. If you're ever using rocket launchers for DPS on a boss, you need one Guardian to be using the Galah Horn, as it will proc Wolfpack rounds for all of your fire team. The Galah Horn is just a staple exotic of Destiny 2. People are using these rocket launchers in all these mythic and new raids, so of course you need a fire team member with the Galah Horn. Now the Galah Horn is a very simple, decent, exotic, heavy rocket launcher, so if you're looking for a decent rocket to use, the Galah Horn is definitely an option. Moving on here into weapon number 9, we have the Graviton Lance, or as I like to call it here on this channel, the Gravy Train. Now this weapon is just another staple exotic of Destiny 2. It's been in the game since Season 1, and I can pretty much comfortably say that this weapon has been in the top 10 list for both exotic and just weapons in general for at least the past 15 plus seasons. It's just an amazing exotic. You can find a use for it in any single activity, whether you're using a Void subclass or just, a Prismatic subclass. The Graviton Lance is just, it's an amazing exotic. And if you still aren't using it or finding a way to work it into your builds, I definitely recommend you do give it a try because it is very satisfying to use and it is very, very strong. Moving on here into weapon number 8, we have the Dragon's Breath. Again, yet another rocket launcher on this list. Now the Dragon's Breath is a little bit of a weird one, I'm going to be honest. I'm not too sure why this weapon is so high in the top 10 most used exotics this season, but the Dragon's Breath overall is just a very decent exotic. It's especially good at dealing quite decent boss AoE damage, so if you're ever in a room where you have a very chunky, mini boss or boss, and there's lots of ads around them, if you shoot that boss, it's going to leave fire all over the map, which is going to constantly put Scorch stacks on everything, and eventually cause ignitions. These ignitions are going to chain more Scorch, and it's overall very good sort of area of effect damage with all these ignitions that come from the Dragon's Breath, and I believe it does some decent solid damage to any bosses. Not to mention the Dragon's Breath will work extremely well with any pure solar build that goes on your subclass. If you're running the Warlock with Starfire Protocol, extra ignitions and Scorch stacks on the battlefield is very good. If you're running the Bonk Hammer build, again, just more Scorch on the battlefield is very good. But anyway, moving on to weapon number 7 here, we have the Devil's Ruin. Now the Devil's Ruin did get a slight buff in the Edge of Fate, one of those stealth buffs or stealth nerfs, whatever you want to call it. But the Devil's Ruin is actually a very decent exotic now, and especially useful if you're running the Starfire Protocol build on the Warlock, because what the Devil's Ruin does is it pretty much creates fire sprites with every single kill. And then once you pick up this fire sprite, which will coincide very well with your Warlock subclass, it'll give you ability energy back, it can proc restoration, whatever it is, just having a gun that can on demand spawn a fire sprite, being the Devil's Ruin, is very useful. Not to mention, this weapon actually does a decent amount of damage. Pretty much you get a kill, you pick up this fire sprite, and it allows you to activate the alternate fire mode on the Devil's Ruin. And this alternate fire mode pretty much just guarantees an ignition explosion on one enemy, or even two if you can time the beams very well. Not to mention, it also has that slight bug going on with the champions and the artifact mod where it just deletes any champion if it stuns it quick enough. So the Devil's Ruin is actually a very solid sidearm to be using this season if you haven't given it a try. Me personally, I've never used it before this season, but I did pull it out this season to try with my Starfire Protocol Warlock build, and it's definitely by far my most used exotic so far in the past week or so. Moving on to weapon number 6 here, we have the Polaris Lance. Just another very good, fun, exotic weapon to be using in Destiny 2 that always seems to find its way into the meta every now and then. And of course, this season, it's found its way back into the top 10 most popular weapons being used, purely because of these mythic missions. Now, as we all know, in these mythic missions, all the bosses or the mini-bosses are just absolute bullet sponges. They have a ridiculous amount of health pool, and obviously you only usually have a couple Guardian lives, depending on how many people you bring. And ultimately, the best way to finish these missions is to sit as far back as you possibly can and just chip away at this boss until it eventually dies. And unfortunately, the Polaris Lance is a great exotic to do this with. You sit all the way back, you chain headshots, it's going to give you an explosive round. You shoot that explosive round, it's going to add Scorch. You keep doing this, and eventually getting crits with the Polaris Lance will cause an ignition. And it's a very easy, staple way to stay back, at a distance and chug away at these mythic missions. And that's exactly why the Polaris Lance is being used a lot this season. Other than that, the Polaris Lance is a decent exotic. If you enjoy using a solar scout rifle that can cause ignitions, it's a very fun one to use, and I definitely recommend giving it a go. Moving on to the top 5 here. In at number 5, we have the Monte Carlo. This one is, again, very self-explanatory. As we all know, the Hunters and the Titans are just broken. Again, every season they always are. They find some way to just break the game. And currently, the grapple melees on both of these classes are just doing an absurd amount of damage. And with the Monte Carlo basically just refunding you melee energy by getting kills, this is exactly why people are using the Monte Carlo. They just want to one-shot raid bosses with their melee, and using the Monte Carlo gives a tremendous amount of, that melee energy back. Especially if you're running the Titan with the 3 Berserker charge melees. Pairing this with the Monte Carlo, you're just going to have infinite melees, and it's an extremely solid choice to be using here. Moving on to weapon number 4, we have the Thunderlord. Now, again, this one is very self-explanatory. People are using the Thunderlord because it's the new meta of the game. The way these, new stat distributions work, how the subclasses work, the best way to do boss DPS is by spamming out supers, especially if you're a Titan with Thunder Crash. And the best way to build super energy at the moment is by just shooting the boss with a Thunderlord. So in the new raid Desert Perpetual, if you just chain headshots with the Thunderlord, you can just watch your, super meter just absolutely be chunked up. This allows you to get more DPS out by using plenty of supers. So unfortunately, the sort of DPS raid meta at the moment is just sit there, shoot a Thunderlord, and spam supers. So that's why everyone's using a Thunderlord at the moment. Hopefully this gets changed. It's not my favorite playstyle, but, it's what you gotta do. And pushing on here into the top 3 most popular exotics being used this season in the Edge of Fate. In at number 3, we have the Sunshot. Again, one of the OG exotics of Destiny 2. Everyone's been using this hand cannon since day 1 of Destiny 2. It's just an amazing hand cannon choice. It's exotic, it's featured, it does extra damage to red bars, it's got explosions, it does Scorch. It's just, Sunshot is an amazing gun, and it's always in my back pocket personally to pull it out whenever I need to use it. There isn't too much more to say here about the Sunshot. If you've given it a try, it's very, very satisfying, great gun to use. Jumping into number 2, we have the Choir of One. Again, just probably the best exotic in the game right now. This thing is just mental. It has the best total damage for bosses in terms of ammo and a special weapon, but then it also has the highest burst DPS for a special exotic weapon. So with these two combined into one gun, having great overall DPS and then having extremely fast, damage per second, this is just a very solid gun to be using in any mission, whether it's a raid, a dungeon, a fire team strike, whatever it is, having this on you to pull out and just nuke anything down in a second, it's a great gun to be using. And as you see all these Guardians doing these solo mythic missions, pretty much every single person doing it has the Choir of One on them, ready to go. So it's just the best gun to be using in the game right now. And if you aren't using it, definitely start using it. But anyway, moving on to weapon number 1, the most popular exotic in the game right now is the Outbreak Perfected. And unfortunately, it is the most popular purely because of the exact same reason as the Polaris Lance. This is the best exotic to be using for primary DPS on bosses. And with these mythic missions just being absolute bullet sponges, the way to complete them is sit as far away as you can and just chug away at a boss. Not to mention, we also have anti-barrier pulse rifles in the artifact. So if any boss has a shield, or a servitor or a hydra, it doesn't matter. You just sit all the way back 1,000 yards away and you're just shooting the boss, and eventually it will die from you chugging it down with the Outbreak Perfected. But anyway, Guardians, that will pretty much wrap the video up there. That is the top 10 most popular exotics being used this season in the Edge of Fate. But again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Later.